Okay, last of my videos, and this is just saying in the order of like module 1 to 10. But this might be like still at the beginning of the semester, right? If you're looking at them in the order I ask you to. Objective 10.4 is delegating roles to complete a project. So this is, again, more of a practical thing, seeing that you can ask somebody to do something. This comes with experience, I guess, a little bit, because asking somebody to do something can be very intimidating sometimes, especially if it is somebody who is of higher authority than you are. That becomes very challenging. So it is probably the most important part of the group work, though, and because what you end up with is you end up with that person who's going to do everything. And because they're like, I just want to get a good job done and nobody else is standing up, so I'm just going to do it. But if you have that somebody say, you know what, I need all of you guys to contribute, and so you need to take on this, you need to take on this, you need to take on this, it's okay to use names. Like, especially in your group project stuff, you're like, you know what, I know you're good with this, I need you to do this. And then the next person, I need you to do this. So it's really, really important that you're emphasizing that. Um, you need to have a group that complements everyone's strengths. So this is something that we often end up with an imbalance in. If you'll notice it in industry, that there's always lots of managers, but very few workers. They're like, oh well, we had to cut all the fat, right? So we like let go all of our workers, and then all of a sudden now we have like 5 managers and 2 workers. So that doesn't really complement anybody. But what you really need is that. You need that group that works together, that everyone has a certain skill set that contributes to that project. So that's really important. Um, Always list out the tasks first. So it's like, okay, what we need to accomplish by like the next time we meet or by the next milestone, we need to have these things done. As little as they seem, even if they're like a 5-minute job, still write them down. I mean, I still write down things like pay bill and I put that on a list. Guess what? That's one of my tasks. I need to do that. So I write it down. It seriously takes me 2 minutes. And but it's still something I can say, yes, I accomplished, and I like check it off because I made that list and I'm like, yes, I accomplished something today. So list those tasks out and then find out what each other's strengths are and ask who is interested in which task. So then once all the tasks are delegated based on each other's preferences and strengths, you've worked together to delegate that. So as a leader, you don't feel so obligated to be like, okay, I need you to do this, even though you're not sure if they really want to. So this is a really good way of doing it, putting out those tasks and just saying who can help out with this. So that's a delegation of it. You're going to find that maybe this task works for you. You might find that some people need a little bit more of a push, and you're like, hey, you need to do this because there's that odd person. And even as a group, you might like talk together as a group, and everybody like voted democracy says, you need to do this one, and then we'll give you an easier task later because that's like the worst task and it's the hardest one. So we're going to let you do something easier later if you do that for us. So there's a little bit of work that goes into that. And that really leads into what this is, conflict resolution techniques. So this is so important to really understand where you identify within every single kind of conflict. So I'm going to talk about these ones here. So this is a common conflict resolution graph. So on the bottom, we have like the relationship, our concern for the relationship and cooperation. So this is the people. How are the people going to view me and how is this going to affect my relationship with them? On the y-axis, we have the concern for like substance. I want to have this done. It's very task oriented. It's very like this needs to be I need to win, I need to be right, so we see that social media falls on this area a lot. Anyway, so on this graph, it's kind of a continuum, right, between these different groups. So right here, I'm going to start with this one that goes into, runs low on trying to get everything done, and then low on the concern for the relationship. So we call this one the avoider, not so much a withdraw, but the avoider. And the avoider is the person who just says, I'm not getting into this. Like, let's say there's a conflict between two people, or you and somebody else, and that person is like really upset with you, and you just withdraw completely. You just don't even respond, and you do nothing. And so, if, for example, if you're working in a group and delegating tasks, You're that person who's just like, well, I'm not going to offer to do anything. I don't want to put my hand up. I don't want to talk. I don't want to contribute because I just don't want to do this, and I'm just going to like pull into myself and do nothing. I don't care if everyone doesn't like me, and I don't care if it gets done. So that is the withdraw. You know what? Sometimes that's the way to go, right? Like if there's a fight between, you know, between people in your group, and you really have nothing to do with it, sometimes that's okay. Um, and it's like the avoiding of it. In my house, this is like the exact conflict resolution that my husband and I have all the time. So we get upset with each other, we stop talking to each other. It's like the silent treatment, and we just don't say anything and avoid each other completely and don't want to talk. so so that sometimes that's just the way to deal with it. And after we've calmed down a little bit and we've come to the point that maybe we should talk, then we'll sit down and talk. But that avoidance is, you've probably found yourself in that position there every once in a while that, you know, you might get really upset, but you're just like, fine, I'll just do it, right? And you just, I don't want to do it, but fine. Right? And I'm not going to come up and talk to you about it. I'm just going to completely do it, and I'm just going to do it as poorly as I possibly can because I just don't want to do it. So that's the avoider. The next one, staying along the bottom here, is the accommodator. So the accommodator is the person who cares about everybody. They want to make sure that everybody is happy, everybody is, you know, not having to burden themselves. They don't want to they don't want to like put anything on anybody, so they're going to accommodate them. So this is the person who's going to take on everything. This is the person who's going to say, don't worry, I got it. Don't worry, I got it. I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. Because they don't want you to be upset. So this oftentimes is me sometimes at work, and not with students. Sorry, guys. But I'm like with my boss, right? I'll be like, oh, we need somebody to do this. And I'll be like, I'll do it. And then they're like, okay. And then there's like a list of 10 things. And I'm like, I can do all 8 of those. The other 2 I'm not sure how to do, so I'll skip those ones. But now I've just done 80% of the work, right? So this person is that one. And you got to watch out for these accommodators are terrible because they burn out. Because they're like, I'm just going to take on everything, I'm going to take on everything, take on everything. And they're the ones who suddenly snap and they fall into this one up here and they like just drop everything and just walk out and they're done. They have nothing to do with you anymore because they're fed up. So you have to really watch for these ones because you think that they're just being nice and they're being fun, and they are. That's what their deep down intent is, so that you don't have to burden yourself. But they're the ones who are going to suddenly break down and be done because they're not high on this area here, right? So they may not be a perfectionist. They may end up taking on so much that they're doing a poor job of everything. So that's another thing. But they are the friendly person in the group. So they're the one that's happy and they're happy to take on stuff. This is where the leader really needs to watch for these people as well, because these people are the ones who are going to take on everything, and that leader needs to stop that and just be like, hey, you know what? You've done a lot so far. I really think that we should maybe get this person to help out a little bit. Okay, so there's that. So going on the y-axis, we have this one, which is the competitor. Their whole idea is just to win that fight. So this is a tough person to deal with sometimes because they're often very, very independent and very, very strong-headed, and they are going to win that fight. So these ones don't tend to have a competitor does not tend to have a very open mind about things. So they're 100%, this is going to get done, and it's going to get done my way, and nobody else has a say. Because I want to be the one who gets 100%. I want to be the best employee. I will step on everybody's heads to make sure that I'm the best, right? So this person can be very, very difficult to deal with. I'm sure some of you guys have found that out in fights, right? Like you found that you become that person because you're like, I am right and you are wrong, and this is the way that we're going to be doing it. And I've been like that too. I'm a mother, right? I'm right, you're wrong. Now go to your room. Right? So that conflict resolution in that case, it can be sometimes it works. Depends on who you're dealing with. If you're dealing with somebody in your group that really is adamant that you're going around the wrong way, you're doing it the wrong way, and you become that competer and you're like, no, my way is the right way, and then they become a competer and their way is the right way, then we have, as it's showing in red here, we have a very bad situation. So be very careful with this, that because of that pure nature of it, right? So these people are the ones who are, yeah, they might be the ones who are catty, because they're the ones trying to step on people's heads, as we say. For those of you who don't know what that means, it just means that they're going to push people down and talk them down so that so that themselves can actually be the top person. So I guess I should, instead of using thems, let's use me as an example. So for example, I'm working in a team with you guys and I'm the competer, and I'm going to go to my boss and be like, those guys are doing nothing. I am doing all the work. And, every single thing that they give me is always wrong. It is always done poorly. None of them are doing a good job. And so, and then I go to you guys and I'm like, you guys are, not doing it my way. So therefore I talk to the boss and the boss says, yes, you guys are doing it wrong. And therefore you guys need to start conforming to like what I say, because my way is the right way to do this. And so that's what I mean. As like, I would put you down so that I can be raised up and be like that star employee. I'm not like that, but but sometimes I can get like this sometimes on social media, right? It's like there's that I am right, you are wrong kind of situation, and I try to avoid that as much as possible. This like red area is kind of a dangerous zone for me sometimes. Then we have compromise. So compromise, you guys hear about a lot. It's like kind of the common way of dealing with conflict. Is that's where like there's some give and take, right? So we have some people who say, I really like, okay, well, let's look at like your roommate, right? You guys have a ton of dishes to do. And so it's like, well, I hate doing dishes. And so does your roommate. And it's like, but we don't have any dishes. So the compromise between the two of you is that, okay, well, how about you wash them and dry them tonight? I'll do it tomorrow, and then we'll try to stay on top of this. And so that becomes the compromise. So everybody has to do it, but everybody has each day you're switching back and forth. Or the compromise is that, okay, well, I'll do my dishes, you do your dishes. If we're eating together, then each of us I'll wash one day and you dry, and then we'll switch the next day. So that would be compromising. You both are doing things you don't like and you hate doing it, but you have to do it. So therefore, there's a give and take in that situation. Collaborate is where everyone kind of wins, right? So we have a high relationship status and a high finishing up something and doing a good job with it. So let's use the washing dishes situation. So here you sit down, you're like, okay, we have all these dishes and they keep piling up and both of us hate doing dishes. What can we do? It's like, okay, well, we could buy a dishwasher. Well, our landlord probably doesn't really want a dishwasher put in because it's going to, do reno and everything else. So, okay, well, that doesn't work. All right, so let's, what if we do this compromise? Like, you wash and I dry. Like, which one do you like doing better? I like washing. I like washing. It's like, well, yeah. Well, maybe we have a little bit of extra. You know what? I have some extra cash. Do you have an extra, like, $30 a week? Maybe we could, like, put together $60 a week and we can hire somebody to come do our dishes. Yes, that is the way to do it, because then I don't have to do dishes. I'm done doing dishes. I hire somebody, they do my dishes for me, and we're done, and everybody's happy. Awesome, we're done. Perfect. That we've just collaborated, came up with like this crazy problem-solving technique. It's a new creative idea, and somebody gets a job out of it. So this is that's collaboration. So that is where you brainstorm. So if there is a issue or if there is something that needs to be done and you need to try to work together on it, sit down and brainstorm some ideas. Throw out the craziest ideas. It doesn't matter what they are. And then you can eliminate them later if they're not realistic. So again, we may use the different conflict resolution techniques with different people. And take a time to like reflect on where you're falling in that spectrum, right? None of them are like really bad. It just depends on the situation. And some of them, the ideal one is the collaboration, because that one is happy on both sides. But sometimes that collaboration is going to take too long, or there's another situation that's happened and it's just not able to achieve it. So it does require communication to be able to collaborate, so you have to be able to communicate with each other to do that. So So one conflict resolution does work better than another in some situations. Like as a mother, I'm not going to sit and collaborate with my kids, like especially when they are fighting me on like whether they want to be on the computer or not. You know, it's like, no, you're not on the computer. The collaboration that we did, we said you're going to have 2 hours. That's it. That's all you get for the summer, for the day. You get 2 hours of screen time a day, which is a crazy amount in my opinion. But we collaborated on that. And now you're fighting me on this thing that we just collaborated with. So now I'm going to be the computer because I'm like, you need to listen to me because that was what we agreed on, right? So that's where that comes in. So and like I mentioned, collaboration is kind of the best because everybody ends up with the same goal because they all want to be happy and work towards the same thing. So that's the optimal effective point. So in Objective 10.6 is expressing feedback. So feedback is an interesting one because of the fact that everybody's so different. So there is this feedback graph that I have. And so we have positive feedback, we have negative feedback, and then we have conditional feedback, and we have unconditional feedback. So there is certain things that like certain quadrants this falls into, and you have to keep in mind which one it goes into. So there's criticism that goes on the bottom because it's negative, right? So we know that destructive criticism is like, you really suck at doing this, and this is terrible. Go fix it. Right? That's destructive. Like that doesn't do anybody any good and whatsoever. Where constructive might be, you know, I noticed in your work that that there was this error that I found, and I think we should try to fix it. If we can do something with, let's go back and like work on this together, or do you mind going back and checking this? That's a constructive criticism. So this destructive, and I'm going to start in the negative because I want to move to the positive and the best situation. And really this should be like mirrored because I mean like two negatives. But the destructive criticism, it's negative feedback, but it is unconditional feedback. So this has no condition to it. It's just like, you suck. Well, what's the condition on that? You know, and I remember even as a child, or even in like the real world, it's like, okay, you know, I've had somebody say to me that, you know, I don't like the way you dress. It's like, well, that's nice. I don't care how you think, because that's the destructive criticism that's coming out, and really it has no condition to it, and I frankly don't care, and is negative. So it falls into the useless information that now I have to filter out and try to get away from, because that could be considered an abuse, or it could be considered harassment, so forth. So constructive criticism is linked to behavior. It has a condition, right? So when I say, oh, you know, here I'm like, your work sucks, it's terrible, go do it again, that really didn't give any good criticism at all. Constructive criticism is where I find that particular thing that I need them to change, and I say, why don't we, and then I provide a solution for that. So let's do this, and then why don't we try to do it this way? Or do you need help with it? Or do you have another optimal way of approaching this? So that's constructive criticism. Then there's positive feedback. Now, there's the unconditional praise, and then there's conditional praise. So unconditional praise is linked to the person. So this is like, hey, I love your work. It looks fantastic. Great job. Okay, great, thanks. Like, some people love that. They're like, yes, I got some praise. What really comes out of that, though? What does that inspire them to continue to do? Because that was just that one thing that they handed you. Where if I go into conditional praises, now what I'm doing is not only am I giving positive feedback, but I'm also saying that it's a condition. So the difference between unconditional and conditional. So unconditional, love your work, you did a fantastic job. Thanks so much. Conditional phrase is, I really like what you did here. And this is exactly what I would love to see in the future, and to continue doing this, because this is so this is such a powerful tool that you've used in this case, or a powerful approach that you've used in this case, that if you come into these situations again, I would love to see you do this again. Notice the difference between that. The side on the condition for the behavior, this is all stuff that has to do with being a little bit more specific. It has to do with finding something that is there, that you can say, continue doing this, or go back and change this. Now, not everything has to be positive, right? Like you'll even see in school, we give, the idea is to give constructive feedback. It's like, this component needs to be changed. This is why it needs to be changed. And, go back and take a look at it. It's not that I'm like saying, this is terrible, it's wrong, do it again. Although the online system kind of does that to us. So, this whole computer thing, it's all black and white with it. Computers are so black and white. Anyway, so, but the idea behind conditional praise is that. So this is where, like, for example, if you ask for a reference, like a reference letter, you want them to fall in this conditional praise, right? Because unconditional praise is like, yeah, they were a great student, they did a good job, they showed up to class, they're great. Well, really, that's okay. Now you're going out into the real world. So I show up to my work and that's all I need to do. So you want your references to fall in this. You want them to be really specific. So here is some feedback cycles. Okay, so there's no start and end really to this. But let's say we go through and we discover issues. So this is, and it's not, feedback is not always about issues. It could be something good too. Maybe like, hey, I really like what I did there. So there's self-discovery and there's assisted discovery. So self-discovery is your own doing. So you sit back and you reflect on what you did. I know you guys hate reflections, and I know that that's part of like this course, but this self-discovery component is really, really important. That's where you say, okay, this is what I need to work on. I mean, how many of you in your life have said, I need to improve on a skill? I need to maybe study harder for the next, and study harder is like a bad term because this really doesn't really say anything. But that kind of, the reflection of that. So it's like, what do I need to work on? You can look at like the really personal sides, like, you know what, I have a hot temper. I really need to work on that. So that's self-discovery. Nobody told you. They're like, you know what, you have a hot temper, you need to go work on that. But there is the assisted discovery, which might be somebody coming up to you and saying, I've noticed in the past little while that you're starting to lose your temper a little bit more, and that makes me feel really uncomfortable. And I was wondering, is there something that we can do together to help you prevent these these really bad hot temper outbreaks, right? And so can we discuss it and try to come up with it? So that's assisted discovery. So somebody notices something and they say you need to change it, where there's self-discovery where you notice it and you need to change it. So then what you move into is the analyze the cause and consequences. So this is like almost cognitive behavior techniques, right? So the cognitive behavior therapy. But you analyze the causes and consequences, right? So why do I have a massive temper blowout? What causes it? You go through that, and you kind of identify all of those causes, and then you go into consequences. So what happens when I do have that? What happens? Who does it affect? What things do I break? Things like that. So how does it make me feel, like as the person being an outbreak, like doing the temper tantrum? So that's what that next step is. And then the next thing is coming up with options and solutions. So, next time maybe I hold my breath for 10 seconds. Or that's just like the simple way of going about it. Or maybe there's something else that I can kind of throw in there and come up with different ways that I can approach that instead of like having a massive temper tantrum. Then I commit to the action. So commit to action. This component is all about you saying, I am going to start making this change. I am going to implement the solution that I think is going to be best. I can always I can always evaluate which comes next, but I'm going to try it now and then commit to that. And if there is somebody else involved in that feedback, then say that person is there and says, okay, we are going to, I expect to see this in the next time this happens, and I will be watching for you to do this when you see it. Is there something that I can do to flag you to say, hey, you're getting too tempered, like your temper's going up too much? So that's committing to action. And then you evaluate. So maybe that you go back and you're like, okay, I had this, like, my trigger happened, which is this cause. I held my breath for 10 seconds. and then I let it go, and then I ended up blowing up again. Okay, well, that didn't work. So that's my evaluation. So I go, okay, well, let's go back to here. What is it that, again, that maybe I need to discover it? It's still, maybe there's something else that's involved in it, and I notice that now because I've identified the first issue, and I got to work on that next, and then I go through the whole cycle. So this cycle is constantly running. So if you are the person giving feedback, there are a couple ways of doing feedback. There are obviously way more. Okay, so these are like productive feedback methods for like things they need to work on, right? Constructive feedback, there's a lot of ways of like showing recognition on like not or like giving praise, right? So recognition really helps as well. So I don't have that listed here, but I'll get to it. So there's the sandwich method. I'm sure you've all heard of it. Give them praise first. Tell them, the things that maybe you would like to see improved on and how to do it, and then give them praise again, right? I really love the work that you did in this introduction in your report. You did a really good job with the feedback, or not the feedback, the background checks. You did a really good job of like including a lot of information so everybody really knows like why we're doing this and what this report is about. It's fantastic. The one thing that's missing is the references. So I can see that you have not referenced any of your facts here and any of the background that you did. So do you think you can go back and maybe adjust for that? Put in an IEEE referencing system so that you have them in text so that people know where you got your information from. But otherwise, the whole entire introduction really develops that scope. It really draws in the reader. You've done a great job of the writing and elegant writing in here, and it sounds very professional. So please keep up the good work on that. How was that to hear? Rather than, hey, I see your introduction. You didn't reference anything. Sorry, you need to go and fix that. Very different type, right? So that's the sandwich method. You were left with a much better feeling about yourself. There's also the ask, tell, ask method, and this is all about like collaboration, right? So you ask them to talk about their performance. So you say, okay, give me a review. How do you feel that you did on this report? And they say, oh, I think I did a great job. I got all this information. I did a really good job with the research. I identified all the aspects, blah, blah, blah. And then do you see anything that you might need to improve on or anything that you might need to add? And they, you kind of ask all those questions. And then you say, okay, do you mind if I tell you about what I see? And then you say, oh, you could throw in the sandwich method here and tell them that. And then then you say, well, in the future, like, what do you think you can do to remember to put in those in-text citations? And they will come up with their own solution, or maybe you can give them some pointers if they can't. So that's the ask, tell, ask method. I don't have a slide on giving praise because there's just so many different ways of doing it. Some people love recognition, so they want to be, they want to see awards. They want to see somebody saying thank you over the intercom, saying thank you, Karina, for doing this. It was amazing. Loved it. Some people love that. Some people are like, you know what, just buy me a coffee. I'm happy with that. Or like, just send me an email and say thanks. I'm good. Like that's all I need. And some people they just want to be able to say, hey, like let's all go out and celebrate together as a team that we accomplished something. I don't want the personal praise, but I want the team praise. So again, that could depend on the different situations that you're in, but that is another feedback method, is to say, keep doing the good stuff. So again, there's these references that I found for this on conflict resolution and communication and so forth. So please check these out. They're really good references to read up on, and they'll give you an opportunity to explore a little bit more on your own self. I know that whole self-learning thing, especially when you're like between the ages of like 18 and 25, you're like, I don't really need to look that up. I was one of those people. I'm like, I don't need to do some self-exploration. I'm good. But it's good to know and just to be aware and to put names to what you're doing, right? And have that labeling. So that's really important. That's why we do it the way that we do. And so that is everything for the module 10. So if this is your last module then that you're looking at, then fantastic, you are done. This is it. If you are doing it in the order that I've given it to you, you've still got 8 more modules to go. So yeah, so anyways, I will stop it here and we will either continue on or good luck in the final.